Hello, everyone, and welcome to this AGU Career Center webinar featuring Lisa Balbes. My name is Nathaniel Janik, and I'm the Career Services Coordinator here at AGU, and I'll be your host for today's webinar titled, Getting to Yes, Learning to Negotiate More Effectively. If you have questions during the presentation today, please type them into the question box on the right-hand side of your control panel. You'll see that you have a couple of different tabs there. There's a Questions tab, a Chat tab, a Polls tab. You'll also notice that there's a little hand-raising icon, and we'll be using that as well. We also have a handout for today's webinar. You can access that handout by clicking on the Handouts tab on the control panel and then clicking on the document to download it. You can download the document at any time during the webinar. And finally, the link to the online recording of this webinar is going to be sent to all attendees in a follow-up email in a few days. So yes, this webinar is being recorded. Presenting today's webinar is Lisa Balbes. Lisa has been a freelance technical writer and editor at Balbes Consultants for 25 years. She is the author of Nontraditional Careers for Chemists, New Formulas for Chemistry Careers, and today she'll be discussing how to prepare yourself for job negotiations. And with that, I'm going to pass the mic over to Lisa.
Okay, thank you, Nathaniel. And I'm hoping that everybody can see my screen and see the first slide, so we should be all set to go. I'm going to talk for a little bit, kind of go through some general topics about negotiating, how to handle that, how to prepare yourself. We have left lots of time at the end for questions, so as you think of questions, please go ahead and do type those in, and we will answer those at the end. So let's go ahead and look at our agenda. We're going to start by talking about job offer negotiations. That's usually what most people think about and what most people are interested in. So we'll talk about kind of how to do those. We'll talk about how to figure out your own worth and what you should really be negotiating for, so what you're worth in the marketplace. We'll give you some tips for identifying your strategy, so how you're going to approach this negotiation, how you're going to know if you're successful or not. And then at the end, we'll talk about some ways that you can practice negotiating, because like most other things, negotiating is a learned skill, and the more you practice, the better off you will be. And you probably don't get a lot of opportunity to negotiate job offers, but there's lots of other things you can do that will be helpful as well. So let's start by talking about kind of some of the basic ground rules, some of the things you really want to keep in mind when you're talking about negotiations and how to do those. The first rule, which ideally we wouldn't have to say, but we'll go ahead and say it anyway, is to be honest. You always want to tell the truth in every kind of business situation or business dealing. First of all, it's much easier to keep track of. And if you don't, it's likely to come back to you and not in a good way. So always want to make sure that you're telling the truth in your negotiations, that you're really honest about what you're looking for, what you want. But you don't necessarily have to tell everything. If it's something that doesn't help you, you don't have to volunteer that early. You can wait until they ask for that information, and we'll talk about some examples of that. Also remember that negotiations they're not binary. It's not a I get something and so you don't get it. You want this to really be more of a collaboration, of a win-win, where the organization gets a good employee and you get a job and salary and benefits and things that make you happy. So you want everybody to go into this feeling good. Also remember that you have some power during these negotiations. You do not have to accept the position. If someone offers you a position and you look at it, you may decide you don't want it. If you do decide that this is just not something that you're interested in, no matter what the salary is, or if you can't come to terms, you're always perfectly able to say no. But if you do decide you're not going to take the position, you want to let them know as soon as possible, and don't waste their time and don't waste your time. Just trying to negotiate to see how much you can get and then say, thanks, but no thanks. So you want to be, sincere, and that comes back to being honest in your negotiations. Remember also there's not a specific time when you're negotiating. It really continues throughout the job search process. There's lots of parts of the negotiation. There's lots of times when you're negotiating with them, probably starting with when they called you for a phone interview and the first thing they said was, is this a good time to talk? That's the beginnings of a negotiation with them. So, keep that in mind. There's different things that you may negotiate at different points in the process. One other thing that you want to keep in mind throughout this process is who are you negotiating with? You're obviously going to be talking to a representative of the company, but are you dealing with someone in HR, or are you dealing with your future boss? And the way you're going to frame what you want and the discussion is going to differ depending on who you're talking to. So your future boss is going to be much more interested in talking about exactly the responsibilities of the job, while the HR person may be more interested in benefit and salary and those kinds of specifics. So you need to know what the interests are of the person with whom you're negotiating, and think about what your relationship with that person is going to be in the future, and make sure the negotiation goes along with that future relationship. Okay? So you need to start...
Lisa, I'm going to jump in here because we have a hand-raising question here. We want to get a sense of the audience, so I'm going to ask everybody to use the hand raiser tool and answer how many of you have ever negotiated a job offer. So go ahead and find the hand raising tool on your dashboard and go ahead and raise your hand if you've negotiated a job offer before. All right, so the responses are coming in, and it looks like a few. It looks like about 25% of the audience has negotiated before. So we're going to follow up a question with those that have their hands raised, and we have a poll for you. And the poll is, how successful were you in that negotiation? So go ahead and choose your answer. We'll give you a few moments to make your selection, and then we will close the poll in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so, all right, so we have the results. So it looks like of those that answered the poll, about 41% felt that they had a minimal improvement to the original offer. 29% though felt that they improved their salary or benefits through the negotiation. 24% felt unsuccessful, and 6% felt very unsuccessful. I now work somewhere else. But it looks like it looks like those that have done have had some minimal success, and there's some more here who are looking to improve their skills for the next round.
Okay. All right. So good. So we have some people in the audience with expertise, and so hopefully they will chime in with their stories and things in the questions as well. And we'll have some more poll questions for you later on as well. So now we have to go back. Thank you. Okay, so let's talk about getting started with the negotiation. So when you're starting to think about, okay, I'm getting ready to get job offers, obviously the most important thing you need to know is, what are you worth? How much should you be negotiating for? What is your value in the open market? Some of the other things that you want to consider, what is it that you need? There's lots of things that you need, and there's lots of things that you want, and it's really important to know which is which. What are the things that you can't give up? A lot of the people that I work with, I tell them you're allowed to have 1 or 2 things that I have to have. So I have to have a job in this city, or I have to have a job with flexible hours, or I have to have a job in this particular field. Everything else has to be a little bit more flexible and negotiable. So start thinking about what are my needs and what are my wants. Also look at what are the employer's needs. What are the things that they really need in order to get this position filled? And what are the things that they want? Those nice to haves that are usually at the end of the job description. It would be nice if the person actually had these other things. One of the things that can be a nice indicator is if you can find out how long has this position been open. That can give you some insight into how much the company actually wants to hire someone for that position. And then how do these fit together? Is it, your needs and your wants match up with exactly what they're looking for? That's an ideal situation. So we really want to think of negotiation and managing your job offers. It's just like any other research problem. You want to start with, what is that I'm worth, and what is it that they think I'm worth? And how far apart are those two numbers? And remember that you're not just looking at salary. There's a lot of other things involved in any job offer, and many times those other things are more negotiable than the salary. So start looking at all the variables that fall into this, what do I have to offer versus what do they think I'm worth. So obviously the salary is a big part of that because that's a number, so that's quantitative, that's very easy to compare. Look at things like benefits that are offered by different companies. Where the job is located, the cost of living is going to be a big impact on whether the salary is acceptable or not. A salary that's acceptable in the Midwest may not be acceptable in New York City. It's going to be a very different salary, even though it's exactly the same number. And you want to start thinking about, if you're going to be asking for more than they're offering, why is that justified? What do I have to offer that they're maybe not taking into consideration in their calculations? So we said that the most obvious thing to look at is the salary. So that's where most people start. Do your research. Find out what the market value of this particular position is. You know, did they post the job salary? That would be awesome. Unfortunately, they don't do that a lot. There's a lot of resources that you can use to find these out. Glassdoor.com is a website where people who work at companies actually post their salaries. They post questions that they were asked in the interview. There can be lots of useful information in there. You have to be a little bit careful because it is all self-reported, so it's not, obviously not statistically significant. And people who want to complain tend to post more than people who are happy. So you have to take those numbers with a little bit of a grain of salt, but there's still lots of useful information in there. Salary.com has interesting information as well on what typical salaries are. And of course, the AGI salary info is posted on an annual basis. So you can start looking at those numbers and get an idea of this particular job requiring this expertise in this area of the country. This is the kind of range that that might be worth. Some other places you might look are, you know, BLS.gov has lots of resources, and these are all listed on the handout that you can download. Again, you want to be comparing. If you would be moving for this position, you're going to find some of the cost of living calculators and look at those. And also make sure to look at, when you're looking at comparable jobs, look at the responsibilities and make sure that it's not just the title that's the same, but the actual responsibilities of the job are similar. That's going to be the main determining factor of the salary, is the specific responsibilities for that position. There's lots of other things that come into play that are often, again, much more negotiable than salary. Salary is just one piece. At a lot of places, especially academic institutions, government entities, they're going to have a salary that's it. The salary is take it or leave it. They really have no wiggle room there at all. But there are maybe other pieces that you can negotiate. So you need to know, what are their constraints? You know, where can they negotiate and where can't they? And I believe we have another poll question.
It's not a question, but everybody that's in the audience, if you go to your chat tab, think about what are some other negotiable items beyond salary, and type in the chat box some of your ideas. And we have a list of some on the next slide, and we'll see how many we can actually cover. So one person says telework, startup package, flexible hours, moving costs, vacation time, equipment, like cell phone coverage, telecommunicating, vacation time, PTO, those sorts of things, license coverage. Yeah, lots of good answers here. So I think we can go ahead and move on and see. Oh, yeah, startup money for maybe a lab, right. Educational assistance. Yeah.
Okay, so lots of good ideas. So let's see if we had them all on the next slide. There we go. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, some of these other things that are sometimes much more negotiable. So, you know, personal time off, paid time off. How much of that do you get? Sometimes that's very negotiable. Health benefits. What do you get from the company? Vision, dental. Sometimes there's a cafeteria plan where you get to go pick, one from column A and one from column B. So they tell you up front, these are your options. If it's an academic institution, you may be able to negotiate your course load and maybe getting time off for teaching while you're setting up your lab or things like that, or support from TAs or grad students with your courses. Lab equipment, of course, what you're going to get. Startup packages in academia are very negotiable and very individualized. Parking, we talked about, in some places, parking can be quite expensive. And that can be sometimes they have a lot of flexibility there. I had a candidate recently who got offered as part of the package, he could either have a parking space or a Metro Pass. So he had to go do some homework. Okay, which one of those is better for my situation? If you're doing a government position, again, each level position has a very specific salary, which is not negotiable, but you can negotiate to move to a different step level, which would then come with a higher salary. So you're not specifically negotiating for salary, you're basically negotiating to reclassify the position to a different job title or a different level that would just so happen to come with a higher salary. Some of the other things that aren't on this slide, job title is a lot of times, especially in industry, highly negotiable. So if that's important to you, you can get that changed. Start date is one that I don't think I heard mentioned, but you're almost always going to have some kind of discussion around when that's going to be. And I think we did hear travel to conferences, support for continuing education, those kinds of things are also very negotiable. And remember, with all of these, you want to consider how cost of living and where the position is located would affect that as well. And also, we didn't talk about moving expenses are something that some places might cover and some places might not. So you want to start making your list of, again, of all of these things. Think about which ones are important to you, what you feel you need to get for them, which ones you don't care about so much, so you might be willing to compromise on. Okay? So when you finish all this research, you're going to have your data. So you're going to have a salary range. You're going to know what the market value is for this particular position. You'll have a range, so probably a minimum and a maximum, and some idea of what the median would be or what this position should offer. The organization may have told you that, they may not, but you should be able to find it. You will obviously have the number or the range that they gave you in their offer, and hopefully your salary, the salary range you expected and the offer that they gave you overlap at least a little bit. You will, by the time you finish your research, you'll have an idea of the number that you hope they will agree to, so the number that you think you're going to be able to get, and also the bottom line. So what is the lowest salary that you accept? That might be minimum wage. Hopefully it's a little bit higher for most of you. But what is your bottom line below which you will not accept this position? And then you determine what is your opening request. What is the number that you're going to give them? And what are the parameters that go with that number? So you don't want to say, well, thank you for the offer, but I'd really like this salary. And then they come back and say, okay, we'll give you that salary. And then you say, okay, and now I want this as well. So you want to decide at the beginning, these are all the things that I want. These are, kind of the relative importance of them, so you can communicate that to the person that you're negotiating with, and then begin from there so that they can keep all those factors in mind and not just keep coming back and you keep asking for more and more and more. Some things to keep in mind as you go through this process. They may ask for your salary history. The federal government almost always will. Other places maybe not so much. It's up to you if you want to give it to them. You certainly don't have to. And I've recently heard that in a couple of states it's actually illegal for them to ask. So you can look up what the laws are in your particular state. Some things to think about, is it relevant? If you've been a student working at an internship, your salary really isn't relevant to the type of position that you're looking for. As with anything in job searching, the general guiding principle is kind of, if it helps you, tell them. If it hurts you, wait until they ask. So if you're already out in the job market, you're making a really good salary, they make an offer that's lower, you can come back and say, well, I'm already making more than that, so let's talk some more. So that in that case, it does help you, and you may want to give them that information. Another thing to keep in mind, there still is a wage gap in some places that different kinds of people are paid different amounts. So again, make sure that when you're looking at your comps, you're looking appropriately and you're not accepting something less than other people are getting for doing that same kind of a job. And one of the things that we saw in recent years, when we had the Great Recession, there was lots of unemployment, lots of people for them to choose from. It's always a supply and demand, so when there's lots of supply, the salaries go down. The recession was, what are we, 8, 9 years ago now? So we're kind of past that. Salaries are coming back up, so don't let them use that as a reason to give you a lower salary. So when you're looking at the trends, when you're looking up your data on the salary websites, look back over a few years and see, are the salaries trending up? Are they trending down? What's a reasonable number now at this particular time? Okay. So figure out what your strategy is going to be for doing this negotiation. Ideally, right now, you want to be the first person to say a number, because that first number is going to kind of set the ballpark. So it's very hard to move way far away from the opening number. So if you can be the one that sets that ballpark, then you'll be more likely to end up in a place that's close to that number that you wanted. You want to be firm. You want to let them know that you know what you're worth and you expect to get that. But you're willing to give on the things that don't matter so much to you. If at all possible, you really want to do the negotiations in person or at the very least over the phone. Body language, tone of voice, how long the pauses are, all these kinds of things have a lot of information in them that you just don't get by email. It's very, very difficult. Email is great for facts and figures, but it's not so good for subtle negotiation. So really avoid that if at all possible. You know, when you're talking to them on the phone, don't be afraid to let them think over something for a little bit. You know, it's okay to let things, you know, be quiet and make them think, or give them what you want and then let them go away and come back in a couple of days after they've had time to think about it. You don't want them to necessarily jump into an answer right away because it may not be the answer you want, or they may need time to go do some research and find out if what you want is actually possible or where else they can give in. Really, at the end of this process, you want both sides to feel like they won. You know, they got a really good employee, you got an offer that you're happy with. This should be the two of us coming together to come to a conclusion that we're both happy with, not either one of you trying to take advantage of the other one. So you need to prove to them that you're worth what you're asking for. You want to be able to back up the numbers that you have to give them. So you can't just say, well, I want this amount of money because that's what I want. You have to say, well, here's where I got the data that shows me that this is what this job should pay. I know the published range for this position was, between these numbers, but I'm bringing this extra experience that is going to help in this role that other candidates don't have, or that you didn't put in the ad, or that was a nice to have, and I actually have more than what you wanted. So therefore, I'm worth more than the position as it was published. You really want to, again, you're focusing on the job, the responsibilities of the job. That's what you're excited about. So you really want to come in and help them. And again, know what's important to you and what you don't care about, and don't push them on things that you don't care about just to see how much you can get. It's really about the value that you can bring to the company and being appropriately compensated for that value, not what you need for your personal life. Okay. So there should be another poll? Yes. Okay. Are you going to introduce this one?
Yes, as soon as I take myself off mute.
Oh, good.
So our next poll, as we're starting to move towards the end here, is who in your life do you already negotiate with? So select from the following options. We have friends, family, your partner, colleagues, and supervisor. So people are starting to respond to the poll, and we'll keep it open for a few more seconds here and close it in 3, 2, 1. All right, and the results, an overwhelming number of people negotiate with their partner, no surprise there. And also their supervisor, both of those got 29%, 24% say they negotiate with their family, 18% negotiate with their colleagues, and 0% felt that they negotiated with their friends often enough to answer that as their option. So there you have it. So
interesting.
That one to you. Yeah.
Okay, and I'm going to kind of argue with their results a little bit. I don't know about your friends, but I know I listen to my son and his friends all the time when they're trying to figure out, what they're going to do on their Friday evening, and they're talking about, well, I want to go to this movie, well, I want to go to that movie, well, I want to go to this restaurant, well, I feel like this kind of food. That's a negotiation, trying to figure out what they're going to do and what's going to make everybody happy and who cares more about what and timing and all of that. So I bet if you start thinking about it, you probably negotiate a lot more than you think you do. You're just not really paying attention to it. So again, this is a learned skill, so the more practice you can get doing it in low-stakes environment, again, negotiate with your friends, see if you can get them to go to the movie that you want to go to or go to the restaurant that you want to go to. The more you practice this, the better you'll get at it. So whenever you're going to have a negotiation, you want to have all your information lined up ahead of time. Have done your homework so that you have your ducks in a row. You know the data, you know what you can give, you know what's reasonable, you know what you don't care about. Be prepared to justify what you're looking for. Yes, I am worth this because I have these skills or I bring this experience to this particular position. This is not something that's going to happen instantaneously. There's going to be some back and forth. People are going to have to check. So, be patient. Allow the time that it's going to take. Part of this is developing a relationship with the other person and learning how to read them. So you have to, be a little bit personal with it, but try not to take it, personally. If they say, I can't give you a higher salary, there may just not be more money in the budget. It just may not be possible. It's not any reflection on you, so you have to see where they can give. And really remember that by the time you get a job offer, they want to hire you. They've invested a lot of time in interviewing you, in talking to you. They're sure that you're going to be a good fit for the culture of the company. You have the skills to do the job they need done. They want to get you. They want to make this work. So hopefully you want to make this work from the other end, and you can come up with something that will make everybody happy. Okay? So we talked about all the people that you negotiate with already. Look for opportunities to practice, okay? Y'all are probably going to go out. It's Thursday, right? So you're probably going to go out this weekend. See what kinds of negotiations you have with your friends or your family that you see this weekend. If you go out to restaurants, you can practice, negotiating, asking for a better table, little small asks that don't really matter but will give you confidence in your ability to ask for things and then get them. And the more you practice, the better you will get at this, just like most other things. Okay, so I'm hoping we have lots of questions. Okay, and Nathaniel,
yes,
put yourself on mute again?
Yes. No, I didn't. I was calling over to make sure that I didn't have myself on mute before I started talking. Thanks, Lisa. We do have a couple of questions.
Okay.
The first one that we have, is it proper to connect my future boss with HR if I'm trying to negotiate my salary?
Okay, is it proper to connect my future boss with HR? I'm hoping they're both at the same company. So I'm not sure I understand the question.
I think that this question is asking, connecting your future boss with your current HR.
Oh, with your HR at your current company? I'm not sure that I would do that. And again, the laws vary in different states as to what information they can ask for, but your current company, in most cases, will only verify, yes, you worked at that company and these are the dates of employment. So certainly they can get that kind of information. But I don't think most of them will verify salary information or anything else. Mm-hmm. And that's probably usually done HR to HR, not supervisor to HR.
Okay. All right. We've got another question here. Is it appropriate in private colleges / universities to ask what salaries their recent hires have received? I think with public universities, you can go in because it's part of the public record, so you can check. But how do you handle that same request for private universities?
I think it's always appropriate. You can't ask for an individual person's salary. That's considered inappropriate. But you can certainly ask, what is the range for recent hires? It is harder at private colleges to find that information. But yeah, you can ask for the range of recent people. You can ask for what startup packages were, and they should be willing to provide some of that information.
Okay.
I'm trying to think.
Right.
The Carnegie Foundation has some information. I don't know if there's a lot of salary information in there, but you could go there and look for comparable institutions and then maybe contact them as well and see what their salary ranges are, and that would give you a good basis of comparison.
Great. So Carolyn would like to know, and I know we discussed this during our conversations about the presentation, she's always heard that you should allow the employer to offer a number first. Please explain the differences between the two styles.
And yeah, we were discussing that because the rule that I had heard for a long time was the first person to say a number loses, because you're never going to get a significantly higher number than that, and if you're too high, they'll just knock you out. The conventional wisdom seems to be changing now, and now what the people seem to be saying is that it's better to set the ballpark that you want and then let them negotiate from there. So you can go either way. I think if you have a strong rationale for the number that you're asking for, if they say, what do you want? And you say, well, I've done my homework and this is what I know this job is worth and that's what I would be happy with, I think you're fine to say the number first. If they say, how much are you making now? And you give in, you're a grad student or you're a student, so your salary's not commensurate with, say, what a full professorship or an industrial position would be worth, then that number you're saying would be artificially low. So then I would kind of say, well, what I'm making now isn't really relevant. I'm sure your salary range is commensurate with market rates. What range did you guys have in mind? Does that help at all?
Yeah, no, and I think that's exactly it. I think that before, when the advice was don't be the first one to provide the number, that's sort of in a realm where you're not sure where the range actually is. But if you're going through all these steps and you're figuring out what the market value of the position is, establishing that what the market value of the position is early on, in some ways can help you by demonstrating your ability and your knowledge of the position in the industry that you're applying for.
Yeah, absolutely. It shows that you're serious about the position. You've done your homework. You really want this job. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that they care about. Not only, do you have the technical skills to do this job, but will you do it? Do you really want to do this?
Yeah.
So doing your homework is a way of showing that, yeah, you're really serious about this.
All right, so kind of a little bit of a follow-up. Christopher asks, it's a bit before negotiation, but it does affect it. Any advice on a job application where they ask you what salary you want in the cover letter? Is it better to be too high or too low so that you can get in the door?
Yeah, well, it would be better to be perfect, wouldn't it? I hate the ones where they make you say the number right up front. You know, again, you'd want to do your homework and come up with a reasonable number. And if they force me to give a number first, I would probably try to give a range. If you're putting it in the cover letter, you can put a range in, and that's fine. Sometimes if you're filling out the application online, you have to give just a single number, and that's a lot harder. If you're doing that, again, if you're a student just coming out of school, I would probably err a little bit on maybe the higher side of what you think it is, because students tend to think lower than they should. Once you get into mid-career, you're already making a significant amount of money. What they're trying to find out is basically if they can afford you. So you're going to have to give a reasonable number, and then maybe you go a little bit lower to make sure that you get in the door. Mm-hmm. But still, it has to be a number that you're willing to accept, because if they say, you know, you put this down that you would take this, if you come back later and say, well, I really need more money than that, you have to be able to justify that and say, well, now that we've talked about the position, you know, I see that it really involves, you know, supervising 20 people, whereas the job description said it was supervising 5 people. Since it's more responsibility, you know, it should come with a higher salary. So you want to tie everything back to the responsibilities of the position. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next question here. We have quite a list here. After I do my research on salary range for a particular position in a particular city, is it safe to start with the upper end of the salary during negotiations? You always want to start by going, you know, towards the upper end. I wouldn't go with the absolute highest number that I was able to find, unless you can really justify that. And again, a lot of it is the fit. You have to look at, you know, how well do I match this position? If my background and skills are 100% matched for exactly what they're looking for, and they say 3 to 5 years of experience, and I have 6 years of experience, then yeah, you're going to start up at the top end. If they ask for 3 to 5 years of experience and you've got, you know, 2.5 or 3, you're going to, you know, maybe start towards the middle or a little bit below the middle of the range. But it all has to do with how well you fit what they're looking for. Mm-hmm. All right, so I have a little bit of a curveball here. This one might fall under ethics more so than actual job offer negotiations. But we've got a question: is it appropriate to mention that I got a job offer to give myself an advantage in negotiations if I did not actually get one? I would be very careful. Am I allowed to say no, don't do that? I would be really careful. If you are, you know, negotiating multiple offers at the same time, you can, you know, tell one company, well, you know, I need an answer within the next 2 weeks because I have to give an answer to another company. Some companies will respond well to that. Other companies don't like that when you don't want to be playing one against the other. But if you do have 2 offers, you can say, you know, look, I need to know because I need to make a decision, or I need you to make a decision quickly because, you know, I have another interview coming up or something like that. I don't think I'd say you have another offer if you really don't. And I especially wouldn't say, well, another company offered me X amount and make up a higher number, because you know, it's a very small industry. You know, people know each other, people talk. They're going to know if you're saying something that's wildly inaccurate. And like I said, it will probably come back to haunt you. Yeah, and I definitely agree with that. The first bullet in the first slide of this presentation was be honest.
And if you're not being honest in your negotiations, even if they can't just find out through their connections, they might be able to, get a smell of your dishonesty. And if they do catch you in that, they're not going to be interested in you, and it might go back to the rest of their networks what you did. So, you don't want to ruin future negotiations just to try to get a little bit of an edge.
Yeah, it's amazing. You never know who knows who. So you might say something, and it's very interesting. Just in preparing for this, we had a very interesting connection where it was like, okay, wait, there's a friend of a friend. Oh, wait, I can't believe you know this person. So also, if you happen to mention, oh, I got an offer from, a certain kind of company, they may, oh, wait, I know somebody who works there.
Yeah. So the next question here, if the hiring manager gave a number first and it's way below my expectations, what should I do? What do I do to push that number up, or how do I make a decision in that situation?
Well, you certainly bring it up to them, and that's a really good way to phrase it. You say, I thank you so much for the offer. I really appreciate it. I'm a little surprised. That's, significantly less than I was expecting. My research has shown that this position, would typically be in this salary range, and, this is where that data came from. And, can you explain the difference? Is there something that I'm missing here as to why these two things don't match? And hopefully they'll be able to come back and explain why their number was so much lower. Maybe there's, like I said, maybe some of the benefits are wonderful. Maybe there's year-end bonus or moving expenses or something. So maybe there's a reason why that number is lower. Maybe they're just, well, that's all we pay, and then you have to go back and decide, is that worth it? You have to compare it to what your other options are. Is this where, do I give my example now of my favorite candidate with negotiation?
Yeah, go for it.
He really likes this one. So I was working with a candidate one time, was looking at her second job after her PhD. A company called her on Friday. They really liked her. They offered her, they said, we'd love to make you an offer. This position is between $42,000 and $45,000 a year. And she said, well, I'm kind of surprised. That's about what I'm making now. I was hoping to make a little bit more than that. What can you do? And they said, well, think about it, and we'll talk again on Monday. So she went out and did some homework. She found specific data for that position in her location that said the position should pay between $75,000 and $80,000 a year. So she sent that information to the company. She said, this is the data. This is where I got it. This is what it should pay. Company came back on Monday and said, okay, $75,000. When can you start? And she started at the company. She was very happy there. In this particular case, this was an international company. This was going to be their first office in her location, and they really didn't have a good sense of what that position should pay. So they very much appreciated her providing that information. She said it was great because it removed all the emotion from the discussion. It wasn't, this is what I need to live on. It was, look, this is what the market says this position is worth. And the company agreed. And so, yeah, she's been there, I forgot, she's been there like 3 years or 4 years now, and getting raises and promotions from there. So that was that's my biggest success story. I think that was great. So it is possible. That's also a very, unusual one. You're probably not going to get that big of a jump.
Yeah, but take it if you can get it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so we have quite a few more questions here. So what is the standard timeline for an offer? I've had 2 interviews spaced a month apart. I'm expecting to hear back from the first institution very soon, but likely won't hear back from the second institution for another month or so.
Okay. It's a little bit different in different sectors. I would say in industry, they usually want an answer within a week or 2. Academia, in my experience, is a little bit slower. It still sounds like your offers may come significantly apart. So if you get the first offer, if it's something that you absolutely love and you decide this is great, I'm going to take this one, you would then contact the second company and say, you know, please remove my name from consideration. If you look at the first one, you say, well, this is good, but I still want to see what the second one is, then you have to do a little bit of back and forth. And then it would be appropriate to call the second one and say, look, I have an offer from this first place. You know, you don't want to say it's okay, but you would say, you know, I have an offer that I'm considering. They need an answer by this date. You know, when can I expect to hear from you? You know, will you be able to give me a yes or no answer by this date? Hopefully you can convince the first one to wait a little bit longer, and you can convince the second one to come in a little bit earlier, and you'll have some time to overlap. Every once in a while that doesn't happen, and you have to decide before you have all the information, and that is extremely annoying.
Okay, yeah. So let's see, our next one here, we've got any advice on spousal hires?
I'm sorry?
Spousal hires?
Oh, so yes, what we call the two-body opportunity.
Yeah, the two-body problem, depending on who calls things right.
Yes, we used to call them trailing spouses. We now call them the accompanying partner. So that's something that you can start bringing up a little bit when you get, say, to the on-site interview stage. When you're talking to the HR person, it's appropriate to ask, you know, what does your company do for accompanying partners? Some organizations will have a formal process where they will help your spouse find a position. Some companies will actually hire them themselves. Others will help them find a job elsewhere. Others say, you know, that's up to you. So you want to kind of find out what their policies are during the interview process. But that could be part of the negotiation. You can't really add, you know, say, well, I'll only accept this offer if you also hire my spouse, unless that was, you know, said way up front. But you can certainly, you know, bring that into the discussion. What kind of resources does the company have to help my spouse find a position? There are more, you know, companies that do that, and there's actually third-party companies now that a lot of them contract out to that will help spouses find positions. But that's always a hard challenge, and that's another one where, you know, you have to decide who's going to be flexible and who's going to follow whom. Is it whoever gets a job offer first, or, you know, and that's something that you guys have to negotiate between the two of you. So you get more practice negotiating with your spouse or your significant other.
Sort of somewhat along the lines, because I think that the spousal issue feeds into this question. If I don't need health care or life insurance benefits, what do you suggest to ask for instead?
Well, more money's always good. A lot of times, there will be some minimum level of health care or life insurance that you just get as an individual, whether you need it or not, and then it costs more for them to add your family. So the fact that they don't have to add family is a benefit to them. I don't know if it's a benefit that they offer to everyone. I don't know that you can decline. I guess some places you can decline the health insurance. And you can say, I'm going to decline this. Can I have more salary? I haven't seen that work a whole lot of times, because you could always change your mind later on and re-enroll in the healthcare in the next open period. And then they're like, wait, we gave you more money because you said you weren't going to take that, and now you're taking that. So that's a harder one. Some of the other things are often a little bit more flexible than healthcare, although I don't know, I haven't read the news this morning, so that could have changed.
All right, let's see. Answered that one. Go through here. There's a few more that still haven't been answered. Can you withdraw from a job offer after signing the contract?
Can you? Sure. Should you? Not unless you have a really, really compelling reason. Once you sign the contract on the dotted line, you have given your word that you will work for that company. And if a better offer comes in the next day, you have to really think carefully before you, because you're going to burn your bridges with that first company. You're going to leave a really bad impression. That's going to, affect your reputation in the community for, maybe for the rest of your career, depending on who you're working for. That's why you really want, if you know you've had an interview with another company and you're waiting for their offer, you really want to put off signing that contract until you find out what that second offer is. But once you sign the contract, you're pretty much obligated to start working for that company, and you have to go in and do the best you can. Say, look, I made the best decision I had with the information that I had at the time, and this is what I'm going to do. So it comes to that, back to that being honest. You don't want to sign the contract if you don't intend to go forward with it.
Mm-hmm. All right, we still have a few more questions. Any advice on negotiating the type of visa that you'd be getting with the position?
Oh, yeah, we hadn't gotten any international questions. So you can certainly talk to them about visas and about what the company policy is. It's very variable. Different companies do different things, and I haven't been able to come up with a rhyme or a reason as to how and why they do what they want. You can certainly talk to them about what kind of visa you want. One thing I learned recently is that the company does have to pay for the visa. So I've had some candidates who say, well, I'll take a lower salary, or, I'll pay for the visa out of my own salary, and you cannot do that. The company has to pay the expenses for the visa. So you can talk to them about, what the options are and what kind they will help you get. I'm guessing, some companies, they will be very knowledgeable about that. In other companies, you may have to be the one educating them about the different kinds of visas and the expenses associated with them. So if you're going to bring that issue up, I would make sure that you knew what your particular options were for your particular situation, how long each would take, how expensive each would be, and then explain to them, which one you want and how they can help you get that.
All right.
But there are some companies that would be happy to work with you on any kind of visa. There are other companies that, unless you're a green card holder or a citizen, they don't want to talk to you. And so that's one of the things that you need to find out really early in your job search process, because you don't want to waste time on companies that aren't going to be willing to talk to you.
Yeah. All right. I think we've got time for 2 more questions here. Can I negotiate my start date if I'm waiting to hear for a better job opportunity?
Can you? Well, you can, but if you negotiate your start date and you say, okay, I'll start July 1st, you would then sign a contract saying you were going to start July 1st. So then if another offer comes in, you've already committed to starting on July 1st. So you'd probably be better off trying to negotiate the acceptance date or something, to negotiate for more time to think about the offer while you're waiting for the second offer to come in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that does make sense.
But yeah, again, once you sign the contract, you're committed.
Yeah. All right. Another one here that we have, how do you negotiate if you are changing sectors, i.e., switching from a faculty position to something in the industry?
Okay. Again, it's like any other negotiation. You want to go look at your work history, your experience, what are the transferable skills, what are the areas of expertise that you're bringing to this new sector. So you want to be pointing out all the great things that you're bringing to this position. You don't want to start off by saying, well, I don't know much about this area, but you want to sell it on what experience and knowledge you have from your previous work and the enthusiasm that you bring and how excited you are about this new field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. I'm going to scan through here just to make sure that I got either all of them or at least have answered the general topic. While I'm doing that, I just want to thank you, Lisa, for giving us a wonderful webinar. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak to everybody. And I think it looks like we covered pretty much everything here. So thank you to everybody in the audience for attending. We hope that you found it useful. And just a reminder to keep your eyes open, because there is going to be a follow-up email with a link to this recording. And you can always just go ahead and ask us if you have specific questions, not necessarily related to job offer negotiations, but anything in your career development. Feel free to email us at careers@agu.org, and we'll do our best to answer you. Thanks again to everybody for coming, and thank you, Lisa. Everybody,
thank you.
Have a wonderful day. Yeah.